time.
The Riekes Center in Menlo Park is much more than a fitness center. It's dedicated to the enhancement of the individual, free from judgment. While it is very much a place for elite athletes to train, it also offers programs in creative arts, nature awareness, and physical therapy. But what's most unusual about it may be the way it helps its members, primarily young people, find self-confidence and deal with personal, often very difficult life challenges. The founder, Gary Riekes, has repeatedly been praised for turning around the lives of troubled youth with means that are indirect and often not even obvious to the students themselves.
I like a phrase that you have about kind of redirecting people from a primary goal to a secondary task, I think is the phrase.
Sure.
If I go in with a goal, why not just say, okay, here's the goal, go for it? Why do you do this take?
Let me explain it to you. So we're a training center, and in our society there's a lot of competition and competing and comparative analysis, and there's kind of celebrity status, and especially with youth, often they don't feel worthwhile unless they've reached a certain standard that is externally approached. So what we feel is anyone coming, you, your grandma, your son, daughter, whatever, is as important as anyone could be ever now, at this moment. So anyone coming, whether they can pay or not. And so that's the energetic that surrounds them. Now with that, then they're coming to train to get better at what they're interested in. So there isn't competition. We're not a competing center. So the idea is they're coming to train to improve their quality of life, to improve them, to get better at their skill sets.
Well, what's an example of a secondary task and a primary goal and how you substitute?
Okay, sure. So say you're a basketball player and you want to be in the NBA. You know how many kids want to be in the NBA? You know, all of them. You know, I want to be in the NBA. You know how many parents want their kids to play in the NBA? All of them. Okay, so now they'll say, I want to play in the NBA. That's their goal, right? Okay, well we break that down and say, okay, so you want to be a better basketball player, right? Now what you need to be a better basketball player is certain performance aspects like anaerobic conditioning, aerobic conditioning. You need ball handling skills. We break it down into component parts like vertical jump, speed, quickness, and then we can metric those. And at the center, achievement is mandatory for us to feel enhancement has occurred. So we need metrics of success, tangible metrics of success that the student can internally celebrate. So we help students define and accomplish their goals, correct? So in other words, given the way it's set up, we would have to do a very bad job for them not to be successful, because if we decide that you want to be a better if you decide you want to be a better basketball player, and we feel, as you do, that you need to work on your vertical jump, and we're not going to compare you to somebody else, just to yourself, it's very easy to have you improve.
You're going to compare me to yesterday's vertical jump.
Exactly.
So what is it about your model of approaching young people, or people, as you say, of all ages, that is a little bit different maybe from other models?
We have a peer mentoring formula where the student becomes teacher to self and teacher to others. Now this is supervised by a credentialed accredited adult who's accredited in whatever is needed from the outside world and also in our own internal accreditation system. I don't think this mentoring model of peer mentoring is found anywhere else. So we take a curriculum and create in a piece of processing, and so a student would learn that process and be able to teach that to someone else as they're learning it. So they learn it themselves. After they perfect it, move on to step number 2, they can teach and help somebody else with step number 1.
I'd like to go back to your own experience, which is key in all this. Tell me about your athletic past and your injury, and how that affected or defined what this place is.
Well, so I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and my mom was a professional musician. My dad was a football player at the University of Minnesota. I decided I wanted to go to Stanford to be a pro football player eventually and a rock musician. And so that's how I got started.
Two lofty goals.
Two lofty goals, and so played football at Stanford, had an injury with a back injury, and it was really through my own inability to communicate honestly and to take responsibility for myself that it became a terrible problem. So
what do you mean by that?
Well, so when I went into the training room the first time with the injury, which looked like just a hamstring injury, they said, okay, does this hurt? And I said, no, not really. Does this hurt? No, not really. Does this hurt? No, not really. So I was...
And meanwhile, it was excruciating.
It was hurting, yes.
Yeah.
And so I was not communicating honestly what was going on. And I really wasn't taking responsibility for myself. And so I had a series of surgeries and rehabilitation where it just taught a lot of lessons, took a long time.
You do seem to have an ability to, or tendency to point to all the mistakes you've made and what you've learned from them. That's unusual.
Yeah.
But tell me how that's worked for you. Give me some examples.
Well, I'd say the center, I've given many lectures on the foundations of failure, and I think some of the greatest teachers are our lessons that we learn that are failures. One of the things that you know, if you make someone cry, then you know you probably said the wrong thing. And I'm joking, but there was a time when sensitivity to others, that philosophy came to the center, was about 1982, back at my house, and there was a very tall young man. And I was a basketball player, and I played center, and I'm not very tall, and I was always jealous of big guys. And so I was the big man today. And so I always thought that was a compliment. And then one day that person made Athlete of the Year, and they came in and they were crying. And I said, what's the matter? And they explained how the photographer tried to make a fool out of them and tried to find desks they couldn't fit at. And I didn't understand his problem, because I said, well, why didn't you tell him he was making fun of you, that it didn't make you feel good? And he said, I can't do that. He had too much pride. And so when I learned that people are different. Like, what I think, my view of how to handle things isn't necessarily someone else's ability to handle them the same way. So I looked around at my house and saw how many people were saying things that were not kind to the other person from the other person's perspective. So the idea of sensitivity to others is seeing things through another person's perspective, and making sure that you're making them safe and comfortable.
What do you most want parents to know about their kids and maybe about the center? What do they not maybe understand about their kids?
I think one of the things that's the most important, and often this isn't realized until a child is in serious trouble, I mean, either from a health standpoint or in other ways, or they lose the child, that how valuable that child is to them. So often I think in our society right now, the value placed on the child is in their accomplishments, and what college they get into, or I don't think the parents necessarily always enjoy having their children right now. They have so many wishes that they project onto them. And so in a way, we're a center to help those wishes fit in the context of human enhancement.